The Lycan King believed he was betrothed to an ugly maiden, until he revealed her face. The Frostheart Kingdom is dying. For 3 generations, a curse has been tightening its grip. Winters grow longer, summers shorter, and each Lycan heir is born weaker than the last. King Ragnar Frostheart, the strongest warrior his people have produced in decades, knows he may be the last unless he honors an ancient betrothal pact his great-grandfather signed with the mysterious Granger clan. The treaty is clear: he must marry their veiled daughter. But the rumors have spread like wildfire through the snow-laden territories. The Granger maiden is so grotesquely ugly that she has never been seen without her coverings, not even by her own people. As Zora Granger arrives at the frost-carved palace, wrapped in layers of pink silk that reveal nothing of her face or form, the court erupts in barely concealed mockery. Ragnar stands in the enchanted courtyard, an impossible garden of warmth and light amid Alaska's frozen wilderness, and steels himself for duty over desire. For generations, the Granger clan guarded their terrible secret. The daughter they promised in the ancient treaty carried forbidden magic that could doom them all. The ancient ceremony demands he lift her veil. As his fingers touch the delicate fabric, he prepares for revulsion. Wrinkling his face in disgust, he thought to himself, this arranged marriage changes everything. But duty demands he continue. He steels himself, jaw clenched, reminding himself this sacrifice will save his dying bloodline. His people's survival matters more than his personal revulsion. He must endure this loveless union for the kingdom's sake alone. But when the silk falls away, Elder Mora reveals the shocking truth. Zora was veiled not just to hide ugliness, but to conceal her identity as the last living Sunbringer, a magical lineage believed extinct. Her people were hunted to near extinction by the Shadow Covenant, the same dark force behind the Frostheart curse, but exposing her puts both kingdoms at deadly risk. But before we get deep into the story, click subscribe, like this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more exciting stories to you, and trust me, you don't want to miss them. Now let's get into the story. The palace guards escort Zora to her chambers immediately after the ceremony, and Ragnar watches her disappear down the frost-etched corridors with more questions than answers burning in his mind. Elder Mora's warning echoes in his thoughts. She's the last of them, the most hunted bloodline in existence. He tries to focus on the emergency council session that follows, but his attention fragments. Lady Astrid speaks of security protocols and traditional seclusion periods for new brides. Captain Fenn discusses rotating guard assignments. The words wash over him meaninglessly because all Ragnar can see is the way Zora's expression had shuddered the moment the veil fell, like a woman expecting a blade, not a wedding. When he finally breaks away from the council's endless deliberations, the moon has risen full and bright over the frozen landscape. His feet carry him toward the enchanted courtyard without conscious decision, drawn by instinct he doesn't yet understand. He finds her there, standing alone by the fountain. She's removed the heavy ceremonial gown, dressed now in something simpler, pale linen that catches the moonlight. Her face is tilted upward, eyes closed, as if she's drinking in the lunar glow like sustenance. For the first time, he sees her without the careful mask she'd worn during the ceremony. There's a longing in her expression that makes his chest tighten. He notices details he'd missed before. Small scars crisscross her hands, not the marks of combat but something else. Burns, perhaps, or cuts from careful, repeated rituals. When his boot scuffs against stone and she turns sharply toward the sound, he sees her whole body flinch, her weight shifting into a defensive posture so subtle most wouldn't catch it. But Ragnar has spent his life reading warriors and predators. He knows instinctive self-protection when he sees it. "I won't hurt you," he says quietly, staying where he is rather than approaching. "I know." Her voice is soft, careful. "You're bound by the treaty. Harming me would void the pact." "That's not why." He takes a single step closer, watching her measure the distance between them. "I don't hurt people weaker than myself. It's not honor, it's basic decency." Something flickers in her eyes. Surprise maybe. Or the faintest trace of hope quickly suppressed. The question that's been building in him since the veil fell finally breaks free. "Why did they tell me you were ugly?" Zora's laugh is quiet and bitter. Because ugly women are safe to ignore. Beautiful women draw attention, questions, curiosity. She meets his gaze directly for the first time, and he sees steel beneath the caution. Sunbringers glow when we feel strong emotion. We cannot hide what we are if people are looking closely. So my family made sure no one ever wanted to look at all. They built you a prison of rumors. They kept me alive. She touches her scarred hands together, a nervous gesture. The same people who cursed your bloodline spent 2 centuries hunting mine. Every Sunbringer they found they killed. My mother. My aunts. My cousins. All of them, burned to ash and scattered so our magic couldn't regenerate. Ragnar feels something cold settle in his stomach that has nothing to do with his ice magic. How many are left? Just me. Zora turns back to the fountain, her profile stark in the moonlight. I am the last. And now, because of that veil falling in front of your entire court, every enemy who spent their life searching for my bloodline knows exactly where to find me. Elder Mora summons them both at dawn, her chambers thick with the scent of burning sage and old parchment. Ragnar arrives to find Zora already there, seated stiffly in a high-backed chair, her hands folded in her lap over those telling scars. The elder's expression is graver than he's ever seen it. Sit, Alpha King. What I'm about to tell you has been hidden for 3 generations, waiting for this moment. Mora spreads a collection of ancient texts across her desk, their pages yellow with age and crackling at the edges. Your great-grandfather didn't choose the Granger alliance randomly. He knew exactly what he was doing. Ragnar lowers himself into the chair beside Zora, his warrior instincts prickling. Explain. The curse on your bloodline isn't natural degradation, it's deliberate sabotage by an organization called the Shadow Covenant. Mora's finger traces symbols on the oldest manuscript, dark runes that seem to writhe under candlelight. They've existed for centuries with one purpose: eliminating magical bloodlines that threaten their control over the northern territories. The Sunbringers were their primary target because solar magic is the antithesis of shadow work. Light exposes. Warmth nurtures. Life persists. Zora's voice is barely audible. They killed my people systematically. Village by village. Family by family. And when they'd nearly succeeded, Mora continues, they turned their attention to the Lycans. Your people were too strong to eliminate directly, so they crafted something more insidious. A curse that wouldn't kill immediately, but would strangle your bloodline slowly over generations. Weaker heirs. Shorter summers. Failing magic. The elder looks up, her eyes fierce. They wanted you desperate enough to accept any solution. Ragnar feels ice forming along his forearms, his magic responding to rising anger. The betrothal pact was your great-grandfather's gambit. He discovered that Sunbringer magic, specifically solar magic channeled through a bonded pair, could shatter shadow curses permanently. Mora gestures to Zora. The Granger clan had been hiding the last Sunbringer daughter for 2 generations, moving her, veiling her, keeping her existence a whisper and a rumor. Your ancestor negotiated the treaty in absolute secrecy. He knew if the Shadow Covenant learned what he'd planned, they'd move against both families immediately. So he built the lie about her being ugly, Ragnar says slowly, pieces falling into place. Made me expect a political burden instead of the most valuable target in the realm standing in your courtyard in full view of half the kingdom. Zora's tone is sharp with barely controlled fear. The moment that veil fell, I became visible. And the Shadow Covenant has eyes everywhere. Mora nods grimly. They've been waiting for this. The curse was designed not just to weaken you, but to force this exact union, so they could eliminate the last Sunbringer and the last strong Frostheart Alpha in one strike. She slides a final document forward, its seal broken but still recognizable. I received this an hour ago by Shadow Messenger. The Covenant knows she's here. They're already moving. Ragnar reads the elegant script, each word a death sentence. The false bride has been revealed. The Sunbringer dies before the next full moon, and the Frostheart line with her. Zora stands abruptly, her chair scraping against stone. Then I should leave. Draw them away from your kingdom before. No. Ragnar's command cuts through the room with alpha authority. You're the only chance we have to break this curse permanently. Running keeps you alive but dooms my people. He meets her frightened eyes. We face this together or we fall separately. The training courtyard lies deep beneath the palace, carved from ice so ancient it's turned blue-black and harder than steel. Ragnar leads Zora down the spiral stairs, past generations of frozen history etched into the walls. She moves carefully, one hand trailing along the frigid surface, and he notices she doesn't flinch from the cold like most visitors do. Your turn to be nervous? She asks, and there's the faintest hint of humor in her voice. Terrified, he admits. If this goes wrong, I might freeze you solid. You might burn me to ash. Elder Mora seemed disturbingly vague about what harmonizing our magics actually entails. She said to trust our instincts. Zora stops at the center of the chamber, where ancient markings form a perfect circle on the ice floor. I've spent my entire life suppressing my instincts, hiding what I am, dampening every flare of power before anyone could notice. Ragnar takes his position across from her, the circle between them. No more hiding. Not here. Not with me. He reaches for his ice magic first, letting the familiar cold bloom through his chest and down his arms. Frost spreads from his fingertips, spiraling outward in crystalline patterns. The temperature drops sharply, his breath misting in the air. Zora watches for a moment, then closes her eyes and exhales slowly. When she opens them again, they're glowing with golden light. Heat radiates from her skin, not burning but warm like summer sun on stone. Her hands begin to shine, that inner luminescence he'd glimpsed at the ceremony now building to something more. Together, Ragnar says and extends his hand across the circle. She takes it and the world explodes. Ice and fire collide where their palms meet, neither consuming the other but spiraling together in impossible harmony. Golden light weaves through silver frost, creating patterns that haven't existed in living memory. The ancient ice beneath their feet begins to glow, and Ragnar watches in amazement as hidden runes emerge from the frozen floor, writing he's walked over his entire life without knowing it existed. It's a prophecy, Zora breathes, reading the old script as it reveals itself. When winter's heir and summer's daughter join as one, the shadow's curse shall be undone. The magic intensifies, warmth and cold dancing up their joined arms, spreading across the chamber in waves. Ragnar feels his ice magic strengthen rather than diminish in the presence of her solar power. Like they're feeding each other, amplifying something fundamental. When the display finally fades and they release hands, they're both breathing hard. I've never felt power like that, Zora says, staring at her still glowing palms. I've spent 23 years making myself small, controllable, invisible. That was freedom, Ragnar finishes. He reaches up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cups her face gently with one hand. His fingers are still cold from the magic, but she doesn't flinch. You've been hidden your whole life, Zora. Behind veils and lies and fear. But I see you now. Not just your face, all of you. The power you carry. The strength it took to survive. The courage it takes to stand here with me. She leans almost imperceptibly into his touch, her eyes searching his. I'm still terrified. So am I. He traces his thumb along her cheekbone, watching golden light shimmer beneath her skin where he touches. But maybe we can be terrified together. Zora recognizes the scent before the cup reaches her lips. Nightshade blended with something darker, something that makes her solar magic recoil instinctively. She sets the tea down carefully on the breakfast table, her hand steady despite the ice flooding her veins that has nothing to do with the Frostheart Palace's temperature. Lady Astrid, she says calmly to the king's advisor who sits across from her, discussing the upcoming formal presentations. When did the servants prepare this? Just moments ago. Astrid's expression shows polite confusion. Is something wrong with it? Zora doesn't answer. Instead, she pulls a small vial from the inner pocket of her gown, one of dozens of detection tools her family trained her to carry always. She drops a single bead of the clear liquid into the tea and watches it turn black as pitch. Astrid's face drains of color. That's not possible. I oversaw the kitchen myself this morning. Then someone in your kitchen wants me dead. Zora stands, her magic already working to purge the trace amounts she'd inhaled from the steam. Her skin begins to glow faintly, warmth radiating outward. This is shadow-forged poison, specifically designed to sever a Sunbringer's connection to their magic before killing them slowly. Within minutes, Captain Fen arrives with 6 guards. Ragnar bursts through the door moments later, his eyes wild with barely controlled fury. He crosses to Zora immediately, hands hovering over her shoulders as if afraid to touch and find her already fading. "I'm fine," she assures him. "My mother made sure I could identify every poison the Shadow Covenant ever used against our people. I didn't drink it." Fen has already confiscated the tea service, his weathered face grim. "I'll trace every person who entered that kitchen this morning. Every servant, every guard, every council member." He looks at Ragnar. "Alpha King, this came from inside the palace. Someone close enough to access Lady Astrid's oversight routines." "My staff is loyal," Astrid protests, but there's genuine shock in her voice. "I've worked with these people for years." "Then you have a traitor among your loyal people." Fen's tone is flat, professional. "Or the loyalty you trusted was a carefully maintained lie." Over the next hours, Zora watches from her chambers as the investigation unfolds. Ragnar refuses to leave her side, positioning himself between her and the door like a living shield. Captain Fen returns periodically with updates that grow increasingly disturbing. The poison was imported through a supply chain approved by the Inner Council. The servant who prepared the tea has family connections to northern territories known for Shadow Covenant sympathies. The orders came through channels that require high-level clearance. The trail leads to the council itself, Fen finally admits, his jaw tight. "Someone in your inner circle, Alpha King. Someone you trust." Ragnar's ice magic flares, frost spreading across the floor. "Find them." Zora stands, drawing both men's attention. "No. Don't lock me away while you hunt. That's exactly what they want, me isolated, afraid, hidden again." She meets Ragnar's eyes steadily, even as her hands tremble slightly. "I've spent my entire life running and hiding. It kept me alive, but it made me a ghost. I won't disappear again." "They tried to kill you this morning," Ragnar growls. "And they'll try again whether I'm in these chambers or standing in your throne room." Her voice strengthens. "But if I hide, they win even if I survive. They make me small again. Controllable. Exactly what I was before." She touches his arm, feeling the cold radiating from his skin. "You said we face this together. I'm holding you to that." Ragnar dismisses Captain Fen's protests with a single look and takes up position in Zora's chambers himself, dragging a chair to face the door with his sword across his knees. The gesture is both practical and symbolic, the Alpha King reduced to guard duty, and not caring who knows it. "You don't have to do this," Zora says from where she sits on the edge of her bed, still dressed despite the late hour. "You have an entire kingdom to protect. My kingdom's survival depends on you surviving." He doesn't look away from the door. "Besides, I trust myself more than I trust anyone else right now. Fen is loyal, but someone on my council isn't, and until I know who, you don't leave my sight." The silence stretches between them, broken only by the distant howl of wind against the palace walls. After a while, Zora speaks quietly into the darkness. "I was 4 the first time we had to run. I remember my mother waking me in the middle of the night, her hand over my mouth so I wouldn't cry out. We left everything, my toys, my clothes, the little garden I'd been growing. We just ran." Her voice is distant, lost in memory. "We moved 17 times before I turned 15. Every safe house eventually became unsafe. Every friend I made, I had to leave behind. My mother taught me to never unpack completely, never get attached to places or people, never let anyone look at me too closely." Ragnar finally turns to face her, something in her tone pulling his attention from the door. "That's not a life. That's just survival. It's all I knew." She meets his eyes, her own reflecting the moonlight streaming through the window. "And then she died. Shadow Covenant assassins found our location through a merchant she trusted. She held them off long enough for me to escape, using every bit of her power until there was nothing left but ash. Zora's hands clench in her lap. I was 16. The Granger clan took me in, put me in the Vales, started the ugly rumors. I became a ghost story instead of a girl. Safer that way. Lonelier, but safer. I grew up in a palace surrounded by people, Ragnar says after a moment, and I was just as alone. Every tutor, every advisor, every visiting dignitary looked at me the same way, like I was the last flicker of a dying candle. The final Frostheart who might be strong enough if I was lucky. If I was perfect. If I didn't fail like my father did, like my grandfather did. Zora reads over his shoulder, her hand tightening on his arm. This entry from 2 weeks ago, she sent word the moment my family confirmed I'd come. She told them exactly when I'd arrive, what route we'd take, where I'd be housed. She's been my chief advisor for 15 years. Ragnar's ice magic begins to leak from his control, frost spreading across the desk. I trusted her with everything. She was there when my father died, when I took the throne. She helped me navigate every crisis, every challenge. She was like, his voice cracks. She was like family. The door opens and Lady Astrid herself enters, her expression serene. Too serene for someone whose secret chambers have just been raided. You were never meant to find those quite so quickly, she says conversationally. Captain Fenn is more thorough than I anticipated. Fenn's hand goes to his sword, but Astrid raises one elegant hand and shadow magic fills the room like smoke. The guards outside the door pound against a barrier they can't breach. 3 generations, she continues, moving deeper into the study with measured steps. My grandmother was placed in your great-grandfather's court when he was still a boy. We've been here all along, watching, guiding, ensuring the curse progressed exactly as designed. Her eyes shift to Zora with cold hatred. Your kind should have stayed extinct. The world had finally moved past the age of solar magic. You murdered my family, Zora says, her own magic beginning to glow in response. I murdered dozens of families. Astrid's smile is terrible. It was necessary work. And it will be completed when you fail to survive until the bonding ceremony. She backs toward the window, shadow magic coiling around her. The full moon rises in 3 days. You won't live to see it, little Sunbringer. And when you die, the Frostheart curse remains unbroken, and this pathetic kingdom dies with its king. Guards! Ragnar roars, but Astrid is already moving. She shatters the window with shadow magic and steps backward into empty air. Instead of falling, the darkness catches her, carrying her away across the frozen landscape like she's made of smoke. Stop her! Fenn shouts, but she's already gone, vanished into the winter twilight. Ragnar stands among the broken glass, staring at the space where someone he loved like an ant just revealed herself as his family's executioner. His hands shake with rage and grief. Zora touches his shoulder gently. She's going to bring everything the Shadow Covenant has left. The bonding ceremony will be their final chance. Let them come, Ragnar says, his voice ice cold and deadly. We end this in 3 days. One way or another. Lady Astrid and the Shadow Covenant hunted innocents for centuries, cursing bloodlines to keep power. They wanted Zora's magic extinct, people like her hidden and silenced forever. If you believe no one should hide to survive, subscribe. Oppressors won't. Comment, I stand with the Sunbringers if betrayal disgusts you. Like if Astrid's cowardice sickens you. The aurora borealis dances overhead in ribbons of green and violet as Ragnar and Zora take their positions in the enchanted courtyard. Elder Mora has prepared the ceremonial circle with ancient symbols that glow faintly in the twilight, runes of ice and fire, winter and summer, moon and sun converging for the first time in generations. Tonight the celestial alignment is perfect, Mora intones, her voice carrying across the assembled witnesses. Solar and lunar magic in balance. The bonding must be completed before the aurora fades, or we wait another year. Another year the curse will tighten. Another year Zora remains a target. They both know there won't be another chance. Ragnar takes Zora's hands, feeling the familiar warmth of her magic rising to meet his cold. She's dressed in white and gold, her face uncovered and luminous. He wears the formal armor of his ancestors, silver etched with frost patterns that seem to move in the shifting light. "Whatever happens," he says quietly, "I don't regret this. I don't regret you. Even though I brought war to your kingdom, you brought hope." He leans his forehead against hers. "Everything else we'll face together." Elder Mora begins the ancient words, her voice weaving power into the air around them. Ragnar feels his ice magic respond, feels Zora's solar power building in harmony. The runes beneath their feet begin to glow brighter, gold and silver intertwining. That's when the screaming starts. Shadow magic pours over the palace walls like a black tide, extinguishing torches and plunging the outer courtyards into unnatural darkness. Lady Astrid stands at the head of a force of Shadow Covenant warriors, her hands wreathed in darkness so deep it seems to devour light itself. "Did you think I'd let you complete this?" she shouts across the distance. "The Sunbringer dies tonight, and the Frostheart curse remains eternal." Captain Fenn's warriors surge forward to meet the attack, Lycan forms erupting across the defensive line. The clash is immediate and brutal, tooth and claw against shadow-forged blades, ice magic against suffocating darkness. Ragnar starts to release Zora's hands to shift and join the fight, but she holds him fast. "No," she says, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We finish the ritual. That's the only way to truly win. They'll break through. Then I'll stop them." Elder Mora continues the ceremony, her voice rising over the sounds of battle. The bonding magic builds between them, stronger with each spoken phrase, but it's not enough. Shadow Covenant forces are overwhelming the defenders, pushing closer to the ceremonial circle. Astrid breaks through the front line, shadow magic propelling her forward with inhuman speed. She raises her hands and darkness coalesces into a spear aimed straight at Zora's heart. Zora has a choice, the same choice she's faced her entire life. Hide her true power, dampen her magic, make herself small and survive. Or burn bright and become a beacon for every enemy who has ever hunted her bloodline. She thinks of her mother who burned herself to ash holding off assassins. She thinks of every Sunbringer who chose courage over safety. She thinks of Ragnar's vow, "I will stand between you and every shadow." This time she'll stand for herself. Zora releases every restraint she's ever placed on her magic and lets the full power of the Sunbringer bloodline explode outward. The courtyard erupts in golden light so intense it turns night to day. The aurora overhead seems to ignite, colors brightening to impossible brilliance. Heat radiates from Zora in waves that melt frost from the palace walls, cause flowers to bloom instantaneously, make the fountain's water steam and glow. Astrid's shadow spear disintegrates before it reaches them. The darkness coating the Covenant warriors burns away like mist under desert sun. Everywhere Zora's light touches, shadow magic fails and shatters. Ragnar pours his ice magic into her, not to cool her power but to amplify it, giving her the structure and strength of winter's endurance to channel summer's devastating force. Together they become a pillar of light that reaches toward the stars. The Shadow Covenant forces scream and retreat, unable to maintain their magic against such radiant power. Astrid stands frozen, her centuries of carefully laid plans dissolving. "You should have stayed hidden," she hisses. "I'm done hiding," Zora says, and her voice carries the weight of every murdered Sunbringer crying out for justice. The light intensifies to blinding, and when it finally fades, the curse breaks with an audible crack that echoes across the frozen kingdom. The ancient ice coating the palace walls begins to weep, seasons returning after generations of stolen time. Astrid and her surviving forces flee into the night, defeated but not destroyed. It doesn't matter. The curse is broken. The Sunbringer stands revealed and triumphant. And Ragnar pulls